Bengt Holmström, welcome to Nobel Week in Stockholm. All Nobel laureates are asked to bring a thing or an artifact that is special to him or her to the Nobel Museum here in Stockholm. What did you bring, Mr. Bengt Holmström?
I brought a Go board. Go is a...
What is that?
Well, it's a ancient, I think, Chinese game, which the Japanese and Chinese are especially fond of to play. It looks like this. This is a board that is for travel. So I used it when I went to Stanford. I had it with me, and I played it with a professor there.
Okay.
And you put this little. It's a very simple game in the sense that you just take turns placing a stone at a time, and the idea. So you just keep placing these stones, and actually, I may place it very far away. It's strategically extremely complicated. So the world's best players still beat any computer.
How do you
win? You win basically by the if you circle a stone, if say the black happen to have these stones around the white one, then this is dead. Okay. Because it's completely circle, but you can have 10 white ones, and if I get a circle around your 10 white ones, so that there are no holes, then you are dead.
Okay.
And that's and then removed from the board, and then basically whoever has conquered more live squares, so to speak, that are under my control, that's the party that wins.
Okay.
So, but it usually doesn't go all the way because they figure out that one is going to win the other one.
How did you get to know this game? I never heard about it.
Oh, this is a well-known game, say among. Game theory is part of what I do, and games have always been part of my life. Board games,
okay.
Of all kinds.
Okay.
And so I would say in the US it's very well known, but obviously in China and it's I think it's becoming better now. Scandinavia may be one of the few places where it's not that well known. But in the US on the campuses people play Go. It's not like chess. I would say it's not quite the same popularity, but it's, in my view, it is a more sophisticated game than chess.
Okay. It's called the Go.
Go, G-O, Go, like Go.
The Go game.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did you start playing it? How old?
I learned to play it this one I started playing in '85 when I visited Stanford, and Mike Harrison was a professor, and it's a game that takes a long time usually to play, 3-4 hours and so on, and he had run out of people who were willing to spend as much time as needed to play, and we were neighbors, and he was my former professor. So that year I started, and I played a lot with Mike Harrison.
Okay.
And a very fascinating game.
How old can you be to start playing it?
I don't know. I assume you can start, the moves are very simple.
Yeah, so you can be a 10-year-old.
Yeah, you don't have to learn, the different pieces don't move differently like in chess. Okay. So you just place a stone at a time.
Okay.
And so it's a very, I love the fact that it's simple, in terms of the rules, and very complicated, extremely complicated as a strategic. So this is actually also a game that is of interest for describing business strategy and such. Because a lot is about when do I know that this is sort of a safe, when is this area safe? That's a very important part of the game. To understand that you don't have to place any more stones in certain areas to make sure that the other one cannot ever get in there and grab it from you.
Okay.
So that's kind of part of the dynamic in the game, and it turns out very difficult to decide when something is safe.
Okay. Thank you. It's a very interesting gift.
Well, I thought it was appropriate for a game theorist of kind to give this, and since I like games, this is the one I chose.
Yeah, that's excellent. What brought you to economic sciences in the first place?
Well, I had no plans to become an economist. I studied in Helsinki University. I studied mathematics, was my major topic, and then statistics and physics and theoretical physics, and then I wrote my thesis in applied mathematics called operations research, and then I went to work for a company named Holmström. So that was my first job.
Okay.
And I was hired for a very specific purpose, which was to implement the corporate planning model, which was popular in the early 70s, where the idea was that computers have come around and they would have the computers would sort of be fed data, and then the computers would suggest strategic moves for the company. Okay. Obviously, you don't just do what the computer says, but the hope was that the computers would be fairly useful for thinking about strategy, and then it didn't take me maybe 2 months, 3 months or something like that, as I was collecting the data. They had 30 factories or units, so to speak. It was one of the biggest companies in Finland at the time. Yeah. Then it turned out that it became evident, let's put it that way, that this is not going to work, in the sense that the people were strategic. I think in part they were suspicious of it. This came from headquarters. I worked for the headquarters. In fact, I worked for the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and they were nervous about what data should I put in so I can get most resources and so on. So they were gaming the model, or trying to game the model, and so I realized that the data wasn't really reliable, and also it was a massively big model, maybe thousands and thousands of activities, and I didn't feel like many operations researchers would feel like what it suggests, then one should think about it. But I felt like I want to understand why the model is suggesting what it's suggesting at a very sort of deep level, I should say. So, and then I tried to make it to replicate it first, sort of as a test run, kind of try to get the model to replicate what they were doing roughly. So that was actually a very economic approach to it, and different from operations research. And it was just difficult to do, too big to understand in a way that decision makers would or should have believed. So then we canned it, and that's where then I worked actually in the company on questions about incentives. How to get information on investments and investment planning instead, but on the whole, smaller models that you can understand, and you sort of understand how the model thinks, and that's how I got, into some kind of economic thinking. Okay. And then I went to Stanford. I was 2 years at Alstom. I went on a sabbatical to Stanford because I had gotten a fellowship, and I went and asked people what economists know about incentives. And so I was very lucky because incentives had just become a hot topic, let's put it that way. Okay. So that's how the combination of experience. But these 2 years at Alstom has sort of influenced my whole career.
Okay. Your prize is about contact theory. When did you realize that you had made a groundbreaking discovery about contact theory?
Well, when I did my dissertation, I thought I had come up with a set of discoveries that were interesting, and in that sense I was happy about it. But I don't think in economics you don't always come up with something. It sort of grows on you because what's built on top of it, and it's a way of trying to understand how we human behave, how the situations develop. We often have to wait for empirical validation, and then the work itself has it's not sort of one discovery. It's a longer sequence of events, and one gets deeper into it. So my 40 years or so, 35 years, in this field, it has a certain trajectory.
Okay. But you felt that you were into something really important?
Well, no, that's not correct. No, that's all the time been important. Okay. The questions have not changed that much, but the answers have changed to some extent, and you have gotten more deeply into it and so on. So it's a journey, and it's what you do on the journey. You have a destination, but you have to be prepared to observe, when there's something interesting happening off the journey, off the planned journey.
Let's bring us to the next question. What makes an excellent scientist, do you think?
Well, I think for me, everybody has his or her definition. I think curiosity, everybody would put in. I would put honesty very high. Honesty and curiosity, I would say, and persistence. So those three would be the ones that I would list. And honesty, by that I mean that when you discover, as I did, that one of my first works were not wrong, they are not technically wrong, but they didn't describe the world the way it was, and I could have sort of taken the perspective of defending it more, but it triggered, it was important actually that because it told how these models that people had been working on thought, and then also told that that's not going to give the final answer, to some of the important questions about how to structure incentives inside firms. So honesty is to be willing to admit that, I did this and it was great, but actually that's not the end of the journey. That's not perhaps even the right way.
Okay. Is there any person that has inspired you in your work?
I think I would say that yes, there are people in economics that I admire. I've always liked to read not just the topic, but also read just everything some particular person has written, just to understand how the person thinks. So my own thesis advisor Bob Wilson has been extremely influential, not just for me, but for the whole field and for a lot of people at Stanford. He was really a semi-god at Stanford when I went there, and his way of thinking, I think he's another person who really sets the standards high, in terms of honesty. But his, I would say, gentle style and sort of curious style is really. It really has influenced a lot of people and certainly myself. Okay. But I have read other people. Bob Lucas, who is a former Nobel Prize winner, is not at all in my field. Beautiful writer. I like to read what he does and how he thinks. Chauvin Rosen, who never got the Nobel Prize but would have gotten it. There are a number of people I really enjoy.
Okay. Let's talk a bit more about your research and contact theory. If you would hire me as your research assistant, I guess we ought to make a contract about my work for you. What would you think about, and what should I think about when this contract is made?
Research, it's a difficult question because I'm a theorist, so I don't use very much research. If I were an empiricist, I would hire you to do empirical work. So I can't speak from my...
If I would rent your house then?
If you what?
Rent your house.
That's a very different thing. Let's take those two as examples. A research assistant, I would not put you on any particular incentive, because I would assume that you have a drive inside yourself. I would assume that you want to do something that I like because I've hired you. So the main incentive in some sense is to explain to you what my values are and goals are and so on. So this is very typical for firms. So a lot of incentives in the context of a firm are actually not financial incentives. They are incentives about what the job is, what rights you have, what decision rights, as Oliver Hart, who is the co-winner, you would call, who should have what decision rights, what information you have access to, and so on. If you are talking about a rental agreement, that gets more to Oliver's territory in the sense that there are a lot of a lot of things we would agree on, but what's not agreed on would then be my right because I own the place and you are the tenant. And so it would be for you perhaps to think about things that you know, things like, am I allowed to paint the walls or something like that? Then if that's important to you, then we would agree on it. That may change the price. In business or in these kind of relations, most of the time you start by saying really the big and important things to see whether we have any scope for agreement. And then the details come later, and sometimes the price very much at the end. So we are trying to find, you know, something that creates value, so functionally, and then and then we would obviously agree on how we terminate things, conditions under which we terminate things.
What else has motivated you throughout your career?
I think one is motivated by a number of things, but there is a fascination as a theorist to just sit down and have a piece of paper and have a pencil and sort of out of those two items create something that can conceivably, you know, be really influential in terms of how people think about the world. So it's that simplicity of the tools, no laboratory, nothing. It's just you and the paper and the pencil, so to speak. Plus, of course, massive amount of ideas and thoughts that have gone before. But I have been motivated most by things that people think one way. Everybody thinks the sun goes around the earth. And then you would be like Copernicus and realize that, you know, actually it's the other way. That's how it appears, but it's the other way. So those kind of problems, of which I think I have come up with some, where I love it. You know, that's, I have to believe that it's true, of course.
Let's talk a little bit about politics. If you look at the world today, what do you think is the most important economic issue?
Well, if we start, you said politics, so I am worried about politics right now, because I think what we call representative democracy is under a certain attack. You know, the public, partly because of the technology, so the public can sort of see a lot more and, you know, scrutinize politicians more. And somehow there's a loss of trust, you know, across the world, one might say, you know, in the US, in Europe.
Why?
And, well, there have been scandals. There is globalization, and technology threatens a lot of people's livelihoods. So there's sort of a unhappiness among the middle class especially. And that unhappiness has translated into questioning, you know, whether politicians are doing right or wrong. And a lot of it is not the politicians' fault, in my view. It comes just from the technological and economic development, and we have been through these periods before. So that worries me in the end more on you know, where that will lead us, because the public now seems to be very willing. They still want strong leaders, so they're kind of jumping over the whole political class that supposedly were representing your ideas and your thoughts, and you trusted them, and they would then process much more information than the public is able to see. So it becomes a very simple and naive sort of decision-making process now, because the public can't be so informed. And if they lose faith in their representatives, that is a very worrisome thing for politics. So I would say I would put that almost highest on my economic concerns also.
Okay. You live in the United States. What do you think of Mr. Trump and his view of science?
I don't want to say much of Mr. Trump, because he's an unknown entity. Some of the things are really scary. Some of the things seem, you know, quite sensible. And I think we have to let the person step in and do something until we really judge things. What is he exactly going to do, as opposed to what he's going to say? But obviously he's not experienced with the situation, so, you know, doing a good job at that level usually requires some experience, but it's not without precedent in terms of lack of experience.
Let's get back to research then. What is a normal day at work for you before you get to know about the prize?
Well, I kind of like to work. It has changed a little bit, but I like to work late at night, especially writing, and then I like to lie in bed quite, a half an hour, because things are being processed during my night. So I think a lot. I wake up sometimes at night and I have solved problems, some of the problems at night. And then I like to process it in the morning and just lie in bed and think about it and then write down what my thoughts are. So, if I haven't had any good idea by 10 a.m., it's probably not going to be a good day. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that middle day is not the best of my time, and certainly not writing in the morning. I've never been able to write in the morning.
Okay. But do you have also lectures and meet students, or are you?
So teaching is. I always prepare in the evening before. So I can't just go and kind of take notes and then go into the classroom. I like to prepare myself. I'm very close to the event, and then my teaching style, I still use the blackboard, and then I let the lecture go where it somehow goes. It depends what students are asking, what they are interested in, what they don't understand. So I guess I'm just not a very plan-oriented person.
Do you work alone or together with your colleagues when you're doing research?
I have worked a fair amount alone, but it is more enjoyable, definitely, to work with people.
Okay. And just a short question, Bengt Holmström, your name sounds very familiar to us Scandinavians. I'm sure many are interested in your family background.
Well, on my father's side, where I got the name from, they come from the western part of the archipelago of Finland, and that's where Finland used to be part of Sweden, as you must know.
Yeah.
So it's not that they were coming from Sweden there necessarily, but it's just the language kind of was carried into Finland, and so I'm in the Swedish minority. But on my mother's side, there's nothing Swedish. There's nothing Finnish. My mother is half Estonian, and then there's almost every conceivable type of blood in from her side. So very complicated mixture.
Okay. And a last final question. Now I talked a lot about your research and your career. It's very interesting. But what is important in life to you more than that?
Well, friends. The older you get, the more friends mean. And family in that sense also is part of the friendship. So yes, that's in the end the most important thing.
Friends and family.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.